Hello everyone and welcome to a Boolean Algebra tutorial. So first we're going to need to have a little recap at the symbols we need. So we're going to be using the AND symbol, the OR symbol and the NOT symbol. We also need to have a bit of a recap on the rules. So the general rules are these. X and 0 makes 0. X and 1 makes X. X and X makes X. And X and not X makes 0. X or 0 makes X. X or 1 makes 1. X or X makes X. And X or not X makes 1. We also have a set of more complicated rules. For example, we have the commutative rule, which is that if you have an X and Y, you can swap that around to make Y and X. The same goes for if you have an OR instead. We also have the associative rule, which means if there is something in the brackets with the same sign, for example X and Y and Z, you can put the X and Y in the brackets and have the and Z outside of the brackets. There's the distributive rule, which needs two different signs. So if it's X and Y or Z, we then get to multiply it out like you would in maths. So you'd have X and Y or X and Z. Those can go into brackets. We then have the absorption rule, which is when you have X and X or Y, the Y absorbs, so you end up with just an X. The final rule is the double negative rule, which means that not X is the same as X. So two negatives make a positive. We then have two laws, which are De Morgan's first law and De Morgan's second law. So De Morgan's first law is not A or B becomes not A and not B, because this not affects the A to get not A, it affects the or to turn it into an and then it affects the B to create not B. Then we just have De Morgan's second law, which is almost the same but not quite. So not A and B makes not A or not B, because the not affects the A, the not affects the and the not affects the B. It's almost like multiplying it out with a negative sign if you were doing maths, but we're doing computing instead. So those are all of our laws. So we have De Morgan's first and second law, we have our commutative rule, our associative rule, our distributive rule, our absorption rule, and our double negative rule, along with all of our general rules. So for this session we're going to have a go at answering this question. I'm going to write all of my answers in a dark blue colour. So have a little look at what you can see here. You've got an A or B and A or not B. And we're going to simplify this down to its simplest form. The first thing I would do is have a look back at the rules and laws to see if we can spot anything useful. So, do we have a not before a set of brackets? Let's have a look. No, we don't, so we know that we don't need either of De Morgan's laws for this question. So let's have a look now. Do we have any that can swap around? We do, but we're not going to mess with them yet. Same with this one. However, the distributive rule can actually come in handy here. Because if we have a look at the question, we have B and A or not B. So let's have a check at what the distributive rule says. So if you have X and Y or Z, you can change it to X and Y or X and Z. So let's have a look here. We have B and A or not B, which would become B and A or B and not B in brackets. And don't forget to write the law that you have used. So we have used here the distributive law. I'm just going to call it distrib for simplicity. Oh dear. But don't forget, we still have our A or. So make sure you put that underneath. So we know that this here is equivalent to this here. Now let's have a look at our general rules. So keep an eye on these. See if there's something from our general rules that might help us. So I've spotted that we have X and not X equals 0 and X or not X equals 1. Up here we have X and not X, but instead of X it's B. So we know that B and not B makes 0. We still have the rest. We have A or B and A or 0. And that's just using one of our general rules. So I'm just going to pop a little purple arrow to show that this becomes that. And now let's have a look. We have A or B and A. Now if we have a little look at some of our rules, we have something that seems to be very similar to A and B or A, but instead it's X and X or Y. Makes X, it's our absorption rule. So if we have a look at this one, we can see right here that we have an absorption rule, which is the same as A or 0 now, because the B has been absorbed. So I'm going to write absorb, because that's what's happened. Now we have A or 0. So let's have a look back at our general rules. X or 0 makes X. Therefore A or 0 must make A. And that's our final answer. So a simplified form of A or B and A or not B is A. I hope that all made sense. Now what I want is, before next time, for you guys to have a go at these 3 questions. You have B and A or not A and B or B, and A or not B, and A or B. Have a go, see where you get to, and I'll see you next time.